we're here again. I believe this is a final.
Yeah, it looks like we got a final on for this one today, Pat.
Yeah, so our little safety protocol here, generally we wear our hard hat, but where this is a final, I think on a Part 9 building, a single family dwelling, that we can go in with our regular hats. There should be no safety issue.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so where do you want to start?
Well, we should probably start by looking at the file to make sure that there was no outstanding deficiencies throughout the construction process, as well as any of the paperwork that we may need at the end.
It's usually the usual things that we're going to look for, but we'll start on the outside and we'll take a walk around. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
So when we look on the outside, what is it that you generally look for on the outside?
Well, at a quick glance, we want to make sure obviously the building is generally complete. You know, we want it to be finished. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the, you know, we got a deck here, we've got a single family house. So we'd be looking at, you know, what does it have on it from the roof side? Is it shingled? If it does it have the proper venting for the roof? If it's metal, same idea. We're looking for, make sure it's properly done and properly vented. The type of siding. In this case, we have vinyl siding, so we want to make sure that that's complete and that there's nothing, there's no pieces or parts of the building that's not covered. We'd be looking for handrails on decks and things like that. Be looking at the grade, making sure that the grade is sloped away from the building and that it's not too high or too low from the building. We'd want to look at vents, so range hood vents and mechanical ventilation vents, make sure that they're all in place and that they're the proper height and spacing and things like that. Yeah. So those are some of the big things that we look for on the outside. Yeah,
and some of the reasons why we look at them too is especially like the siding and the number of windows and openings too, right? So this particular lot's pretty good. There's lots of space between them and the neighbors. But if it was a more congested lot, we would be looking at the siding and make sure it was non-combustible.
Yes.
And maybe limit the number of windows facing those sides. So that's important.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right? So that's all to do with fire protection, right, of the property, right, or the adjoining properties. Yeah, some of the other things too, I guess you drill down a little deeper into is, like you say, we got venting up there, and you see on this particular one they did a ridge vent instead of gable end vents. So we know that's good. One of the things I like to look for and check for is the actual vent pipe for the sewage system. Make sure it's out through the roof. Sometimes they forget to put it out through after everything's get going, so it's always nice to see. So you want to take a walk around this way?
Sure.
And what are we noticing back here?
So this is probably a good spot right here, Pat, to look at the grade, what we were talking about just a few moments ago. Mm-hmm. So making sure that the grade is sloped away from the building so the water doesn't pool up against the foundation there. Same thing with these downspouts. You see there that they have leaders coming off of them to kind of keep the water away from the foundation. Right.
And you can see this one not quite way it should be yet, but that's typical when you get it to these houses to this stage. And you can see a little bit more over in this area that it's not quite sloped away yet, but I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing to look for here too would be the height of the grade from the siding. They're making sure that that's a proper distance away so we don't get moisture.
You're talking about this distance here?
That's right. Yeah.
Right on. So coming around this side, you see a few more little things that we typically look at.
So we'd be looking at the mechanical ventilation hoods. We see a few here on this back wall. We'd want to make sure that they're the proper height off the ground, as well as the spacing is the proper spacing on them.
So these are typically these things, and the larger ones are typically for what?
Those would be for the mechanical ventilation HRV system.
Yeah.
The smaller ones there are typically for like a bathroom fan.
Right on. So an exhaust out of a washroom, could be a dryer upstairs or something, right? So these two here, there is a requirement for the spacing of them.
Yep.
And also to be for the intake to be labeled. And the reason we want the intake label is we don't want people putting their compost bin right underneath the intake, right? To contaminate the air inside. Also on the back here, Kyle, we notice these little, what we call hose bibs. And these hose bibs are obviously for people to hook up their garden hose, fill the pool, do whatever. But this little device right there is what we're looking for. So this is what a vacuum breaker is, right? So we don't get anything siphoned back in that's hooked up to the hose that may contaminate your potable water.
Yep.
So that's a must. They usually all come like that now. These are also probably frost free, which means they stick in the house about this far where the shut-off valve actually is.
Yeah. Something else right behind you there, Pat, just to note while you were standing there, is the clean out for the sewer tank there.
Yeah, so they decided to put this one on the exterior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And there's their tank right there, so it's not going very far. But it is a code requirement, right?
Yep.
As it gets plugged up. So Kyle, back on the back side here, they have quite a large deck. Probably typically larger than we normally see. But part of our inspection is to check the framing on this deck where it's on the exterior.
Yeah, sometimes these decks aren't built yet when we get here for a framing inspection, so you know it's a good idea to come in and have a look at this at the final stage just to make sure there's no deficiencies.
So what are some of the things we look at here for a deck?
So a couple of the things would be we want to look at the ledger board along the house here, which attaches this deck to the house.
So this is the item up here, right? Ledger board? Yeah.
Making sure that that it's properly fastened to the house. We'd also be looking at the joists and the joist hangers in this case. So
the joist hangers are these little shiny devices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And making sure that all the nail holes in those joist hangers are filled.
Yep.
With the proper nails or screws.
Right. So these ones look like there's a structural screw used.
Yep.
So we would just verify that that's acceptable.
Yep.
The reason the joist hanger's on here because this floor joist requires at least 1.5 inches bearing, right? So that means it has to sit on something to support it. So this makes a little cradle and that gives it the 1.5 inch bearing. The other thing you might want to notice too is one of the details when they put this ledger board up, there is some flashing right here.
Yeah.
And you see that flashing runs all the way along there, and that's important because if that flashing wasn't there, there'd be water infiltrating behind there, and it's impossible. It makes it structurally compromise this attachment, right? What else are we looking at?
So we want to make sure that that these deck joists or floor joists are the proper sizing and that the spacing is okay for the span that we have here.
Yeah, so these ones look pretty good, right? It looks like a 16-inch on center and it's 2x8.
Yep.
And we can get away with roughly about 12 feet with 2x8.
Yeah, and it looks like we have about 10 feet here, or 10 to 12 feet, so we should be good there.
And then they come over to some more supports, right? Mid-span supports, as we call it.
Yeah, so here we've got 3 6x6 posts here with a triple ply beam on top. That's supporting the floor system above, floor joists above.
Yeah, so they're meeting all the code requirements here that I can see, right? So they have a minimum 3-ply beam, which they do. They have minimum 6x6 columns, which they do. These columns actually sit on a footing, or in this case a sonotube below grade, which was checked at foundation stage. They also have what we call lateral bracing, right? So these little things on 45 are lateral bracing to stop the deck from shaking.
Yep. Yep.
So
another thing too, Pat, to kind of check on these beams here would be what we call the quarter points.
Right.
So making sure that the beam is laminated properly.
Yeah. So this one here is a little suspicious where it sits directly on, right?
Yeah.
So that probably should be over there. And the spacing typically on these is no more than 10 feet, typically. So this one's well under that, so that 3-ply beam is good. But the joint, you're right, should be probably somewhere over here.
Yeah.
but not on the end, right?
That's
So
right.
that should be staggered back and forth. So the other side, I can't tell if that's one piece or not because they have a little lap joint there, but
Yeah,
so we might want to bring that attention up and come up with an idea how they're going to correct that.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. This one's the same way, so that one's repeated over here.
So I guess while we're down here, we could look at the connection of the railings above.
Yeah, so they did quite a good job actually. They blocked them all in. Right, so there is a requirement of basically that railing to withstand a 200-pound force, right? Any part of that railing, so that's where when people lean up against them, the railing doesn't fall over.
That's right.
Right. So the stairs here for this deck. So stairs are one of our big things that we like to check. So what would we be checking for here, Kyle, for our stairs?
So here we'd be checking, we'd want to make sure that our rise and run on the stair is the proper dimensions, as well as the consistency of the flight of stairs through its entirety.
Yeah.
We'd want to be checking for guards on the stairs in this particular case because of the height, and as well as the handrail on this set of stairs.
Yeah. So some of them are exactly what we look for. So there's a lot of requirements around stairs. It dictates the height of this from here, what we call tangent line through the nosing, plumb line. So this here in this case would have to be how big, Kyle? How high?
36 inch.
36, and that's because it's doing two functions. This is what we call a guard, stops people from falling off, but it also is a handrail to help people navigate stairs. So that's the two issues. So when they're combined, it has to be at least 36.
That's right.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the stairs and consistency. You want to just elaborate maybe a little bit what that means?
Sure. So sometimes, there's a code requirements around the rise of the stair. So from this stair to the nosing of this stair, this distance, as well as the run of the stair, which would be this distance here.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that's consistent on every single step going up, so that we don't get a tripping hazard.
Right. So it has to be what the code calls uniform. We have a little bit of tolerance, but not much.
Not much.
We have about a 1/4 inch tolerance within the whole flight. So if one was 7.5 and one was 7 3/4 and one was 7 1/4, that would not pass.
That's
But
right.
if one was 7 1/4 and 7.5 and it didn't vary any more than that anywhere else, we're good. Perfect. And people who have a natural, and the same thing goes for the run, right? So the minimum requirement is 10 inches, and that's measured from that nosing horizontally to that nosing. This should be about 11 inches, which are good. Perfect. Feel that, Kyle?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got some wobble to it.
Yeah, so this will definitely have to be addressed with some more lateral bracing or additional lateral bracing, right? But we definitely got to stiffen this up. This is a hazard. So we'll definitely note that on our report. So the only thing really left to look up here, besides the shaking, I feel like Pee Wee Herman, is actually we're looking at the guards.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So in this case, the guard height is determined by the height of the deck above ground.
Yeah, perfect.
So in this case, we're well over 6 feet off the ground. So we're looking at for a 42-inch guard on this deck.
And the difference between this and what we came up to the stairs is only the fact that this is just a guard. This is not a handrail. So the stairs are the guard and handrail. What about the nice spindles here? What's our comment on this?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that these spindles on this guard, as well as the guard and handrail on the stairs, that there's no more than 4 inches distance between these.
And what's the purpose of that?
It's so that, children can't get their heads out through, safety things. So, nothing is going to get out through there, nothing substantial is going to get out through there, children aren't going to get stuck in it, that sort of thing.
Right on. So I think that's just about it for our part of the deck anyway. So the only thing really issue they have here maybe is we'll talk to them about about the 3-ply beam below, and talking about how shaky the stairs are.
Yeah, so we'll make
deck.
note of that in the inspection report.
Absolutely. So there's a spot here, Kyle. I guess they're going to hook up some propane for something inside, either a propane stove or a fireplace or something. So that's what that spot's full, but that's not in yet. So here we have another deck, very similar to the back. Construction's the same. On this side, it's almost on grade, but you can see that it is sitting on, and it is attached to the house, and they do have the flashing, so they're good there.
Yeah.
I always like to have a little look underneath these, just to confirm that everything is as where it should be. And it is a 3-ply beam and joist hangers.
Perfect.
And it's attached to the house, bolted with the flashing. So they're good on that part. Again, guard handrail height is appropriate. I can tell by the two sides of the boards that the run is good. So we'll take a walk up them and see if they're the right rise. Or at least uniform rise, which they are. You can almost tell by walking up them if they're out of whack. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you definitely feel it.
1/4 inch or inch, but they usually get either the top one out of whack or usually the bottom one.
Exactly.
You ready to go inside?
All right, let's do it.
All right. Hey Kyle, we finished our little tour outside. Now we're going to come inside, see how things are. So, what's some of the first things we're looking for when we come in?
Well, one of the first things we can do since we're right here is check the front door. So we want to look for a deadbolt.
Yeah, which is this little thing right here.
Yep.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that there's either a peephole in the door if there's no side glass,
right.
Or in this case, there's side glass.
Yeah, so it's all about the requirement in the code of what they call forced entry, right? So they want to have a few provisions in there to give people just a bit of time. If there's somebody outside, they don't want to come in, all right? So with the glass or the peephole, they can kind of look out and see who it's there. The deadbolt just gives them that extra time that people can't force their way in.
That's right.
That's all that's about. All right, where do you want to start? Upstairs or downstairs?
Let's start downstairs.
Let's go downstairs. This little family room.
Yeah.
So, how do you start, or what do you start looking at for?
So we came down a set of stairs here to this level. One of the things I like to do is check the rails to make sure that same as we did outside.
Yeah,
make sure that
right.
they're strong enough to support somebody, leaning on them, as well as checking the distance of these spindles there.
Right on. So typically the stairs inside have to meet the same code requirements as the stairs outside. So we're checking for the run and consistency, correct?
That's right.
So if we were to measure here, that says 11, so we know we got an inch overhang, so the run is correct.
That's right.
All right. The major part I always look at is, and I'm going to put my glasses on for these, but I knew where they were, is we always check the bottom one, or I do anyway. These ones felt good, so you can see this one's right at the limit, right, for rise. And if we were to check the top one, we're good, look. It's within the tolerance level, so they're pretty good.
Yeah, and they felt good coming down the stairs as well.
You can feel it, right? When you walk on them. If this one was a little bit higher, you would almost take a little stumble.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they're good. So we got a handrail, at least on one side, for the flight.
So that's something else important too, is that in this case it's an open stairwell on this side, so the handrail is here. If this was a closed in stairwell, we'd be looking for that handrail to be inside on one side or the other.
If this were a wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'd have to attach something to the side.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'd still be required, so. And these are pretty good this way too, yep, under the 4-inch opening, so.
Okay, so in this room in particular, we want to look for, or what I usually look for, is we have here a gas fireplace. So I want to make note of that because we'll be that'll come into play a little further along when we check smoke alarms and CO2 alarms.
Right on. So we want to make note. Plus, we know that the tanks are not hooked up yet.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, where there is a propane fireplace in this particular building, we want to make sure that those carbon monoxide alarms are in here as well.
Absolutely. So this room, it's just a little hobby room or entry room, right? On the plans, it doesn't show it as a bedroom, so there's no other concern here.
No.
But it is their back entryway, right? So if we open this up, it just goes out to that back deck that we looked at earlier. Do they need a peephole in this one?
No, not in this particular door. It would just be the
main entrance? Yeah.
We have our mechanical ventilation, our HRV system, the outlets there in each of these rooms, so that's good to know, because sometimes those can get missed in the drywall stage.
So we have a downstairs washroom, bathroom, Kyle. So what are some of the things that we want to check in here?
Well, first of all, we want to make sure that it's complete, for one. Again, we've got a bathroom fan in here, as well as a HRV outlet there, exhaust.
And why do we need two?
So this one here is specifically to take and pull the moist air out of this particular room, whereas this one is part of the system of the entire house.
So some of the technical terms is this would be the principal exhaust.
Yes.
For the building?
Yeah.
This is what we call supplemental exhaust, right?
Yeah.
So the code recognizes more steam, more moisture in the air, typically in the bathroom with the shower and sink.
There is a element in there for including that fan into that HRV system. There's requirements for that, but
yeah, so they can kind of combine them.
Yeah.
And there'll be like an override switch somewhere on the wall, typically over here, that they can put in, so that fan will kick in, override the system, and just exhaust the air.
Exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. What else?
So we've got a shower here. Want to make sure that all the fixtures are in place.
Yeah.
And are functioning properly.
We generally want to give her a little test. Right? So we're also testing for hot water.
Hot and cold, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that the water is not going to scald anybody.
Exactly.
We also want to make sure there's not a cross connection. It's hard for these to decide the cross connection because they're lever. But the old ones that you had too, sometimes the plumbers will get mixed up and cross them. So hot is not a hot anymore.
Exactly. And then those, sometimes the mixing valves in those can be backwards too.
And
so
you
your
see the hot water come there pretty quickly. I don't have a thermostat with me, but a thermometer, but the code requirement is for that to be no more than 60 degrees Celsius. Right? Some of the other things that we look in here, Kyle, is I always give these a little kick like this, because there's a requirement for these toilets to be anchored so people don't fall off them. And it's the only device that requires the shut off. Fixture that requires the shut off, so we want to make sure they're on there. The other thing we look at, I always look at, is the actual connection of the sink to the plumbing system. And we're just looking at the trap, right?
Exactly, make sure that it's
we don't want to see an S trap, which is basically like that. It goes up and down through the floor. We see that, there might be a problem. When we see P trap, which is kind of like this and then the wall, that's what we want to see. And we usually have to have, not usually have to have, we have to usually have a licensed plumber on file anyway that can do the work. Right?
Exactly, exactly.
So they're pretty good. Always check the closets, you never know what's in them. Sometimes they have mechanical equipment in them.
Yeah, sometimes they're not finished too.
Yeah, that's right. So.
And then over here we have the washing machine and dryer outlets here.
Yeah, and another exhaust port for the dryer. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, which they must have, and it must be metal.
Yeah.
All right, you can't be that little flexible hose. The other thing we noticed here too, which you probably picked up on the framing, and probably worth mentioning again though, is the height of all these.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was thinking that out there.
And the doorways, which are all 36. So, but again, that would have been picked up on the framing inspection at Roughead. So, making our way down here. This is a bedroom. So what are we looking for in here, Kyle, in the bedroom?
So in the bedrooms, what we're looking for is two major things. One being making sure that the window meets egress requirements.
Yeah, and again, that should have been checked at framing stage 2.
Exactly.
The window is supposed to be in. It's supposed to be, we would do this measurement, which is 36. We would do this measurement, which is supposed to be what?
So no dimension less than 15 inches.
All right, so this one doesn't meet that requirement. And it's supposed to add up to a total, I think, of 542 square inches in area. So, but no measurement less than 15, so we're definitely gonna look into that. What else are we looking at?
So one of the most important things in here, Pat, would be to make sure that there's a smoke alarm in this room.
So this particular one, because they don't want them contaminated with dust, so that's pretty typical, right? But
Yeah.
I just pull the bags off, throw them on the floor. And this one you can see is just for smoke. And we're gonna give it a little test. I'm tall, so I can really reach these. And you can hear them going
You
up
can hear them
there.
going off everywhere else.
Yeah. So these are what we call interconnected, right? So if one goes off, they all go off.
Exactly.
And that's just to alert everybody in the house, not just in this room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a requirement in the code, in the current code, that there has to be one in each bedroom, one in the common spaces between bedrooms,
Yep.
and one on every floor.
Right on. So, looks like they fulfilled that by this one. And this one has a second requirement.
Yeah, so this one here would need to have a CO2 component to it. And that's because of, again, as we talked about earlier, we have the fireplace, the
That can produce carbon monoxide.
carbon monoxide, as well as we have a garage attached to this house.
Right on. So we want to be alerted if there's any carbon monoxide seeping into the home. And you can see that by the little symbol up here.
Yeah, so if that smoke alarm there didn't have that component, we'd be looking for it to have that,
Yep.
or a separate unit for carbon
yeah.
monoxide.
But typically they'll just get them all in one.
Typically they're
Yeah.
all in one, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Let's keep going, so. Now, so this is why I open closet doors, Kyle. Just, as you can see in here, they have the HRV unit put in this closet.
So in this case, we want to make sure that it's closed up around that unit to make sure that, you know, there's no exposed insulation and vapor barrier. On this particular unit here, we see a drain tube there for the condensation line. We want to make sure that that's going into either a floor drain or a bucket or something that's not just running out on the floor.
Right. Yeah. What about the documentation for this unit?
So we want to make sure that the documentation is here with it. Sometimes we'll have what's called a F326 report or a balance report for the HRV system that'll be attached to the machine. So we want to take that with us.
Yeah.
That's going to go in the report.
Why is that report important? Why do we want that?
So we want to make sure that the installer has what they call balanced this system. So we want to make sure that the air coming in versus the air going out is relatively balanced within, I think it's 5%.
Yeah. And if it's not balanced, what's the consequences?
So you could have a vacuum inside the house where you're getting air coming from other places in the house. So again, we have a propane fireplace as well as a garage. We don't want it sucking fumes back into the house through this machine.
Right, because the fumes, especially carbon monoxide, either from the garage or from a fireplace or anything that's fuel fired, it will kill you.
Yeah,
You won't even smell it, right?
exactly.
Right. So, yeah, that's important why we have that, right? Hey, Kyle, we're gonna go out to the attached garage. Right now we have our hot water tank, we have our pressure tank for the well. We also have what I would assume is the electrical panel, which it is, with the generator backup panel. We have another door, what we call a man door. So what are some of the things we're looking for in here?
So as you mentioned, we've got all this equipment in here. So we want to make sure, we'll kind of start here at the back, I guess. We got a sink over here, so we want to make sure that the trap on that is properly installed. And again, we're checking the water to make sure that we've got hot water on the left side and that it's appropriate temperature, which we do. Over here on this side, we've got our hot water tank.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we have, that it's of course hooked up, but we want to make sure that it has this pipe right here on there.
And what's the purpose of that pipe?
So there's a pressure relief valve right here. And if this tank was to overheat and the pressure was to get too high, this pressure relief valve will go off, and it will send the pressure down through this pipe and aim it to the ground.
It's just kind of to limit exposure to anybody that might be nearby if it were to blow off, right? So not only is it pressure, but it's also a temperature gauge too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it does both. What's up with the insulation?
So they've got these pipes insulated here just to kind of keep the temperature, reduce the energy assumption of the unit.
Yeah, so they're required to at least insulate the first 6 feet of the hot water line coming out of the tank, right? Perfect. So we don't have too much to do with this. This is done by a plumber, but this is a pressure tank for the well, so the pump doesn't run all the time. And by the looks of it, they have a submersible pump because there's nothing beside it here.
Yeah.
So is there anything we need to look at for the electrical side of things here?
Typically not. Electrical is covered in this province by Nova Scotia Power. They inspect all of that. But what we do require out of there would be a final inspection report for the electrical system.
An approved one, right?
An approved one, yes.
That's part of one of the documentations we're probably going to write up and ask for, where I don't see it. There is some stuff here. And maybe this is the final. Let's have a look. Yeah, so it's okay, right?
Yeah, so we just take a copy of that for our file.
Copy of it right there, yep. So we just normally take that and put it with our file.
So we've got a doorway coming in from the main house into the garage. So we want to check to make sure that that has a proper seal on it.
Right on. And how do we do that?
So these doors, they'll have either what's called a self-closing device on them. So one of the overhead devices, or they'll have the self-closing hinges. So they're a spring-loaded hinge.
Yeah, and what's supposed to happen? What are we supposed to test for here?
So when we open this door up, then we walk through this door, as we let go, that door is supposed to close and completely seal back shut to eliminate the fumes getting back into that.
Someone just drove their car in here, or they could be started it before they go. It's going to produce carbon monoxide. So if this door were not to self-latch, which this one doesn't.
No.
So this is a deficiency until they can get it to close, right?
That's right.
So we would not approve occupancy for this house until this was working.
Exactly.
And we have to test this with living conditions. In other words, that door closed, the windows closed, everything has to be sealed up because it's winter time.
Exactly.
And this door has to work in those conditions.
Yeah. We want to make sure too that that door has a proper seal around it. So in this case, weather stripping around the door to seal that door.
Right. And one of the other requirements when we have a attached garage is for this threshold to be at least 2 inches higher than this, just in case there's any fumes down at the bottom, like gasoline fumes that don't seep into the house.
Exactly. Same idea with the door itself. You know, you don't want a door that has an operable window in it, because if that window gets opened, again, could potentially get carbon monoxide in the house.
Yeah.
Another thing to note, I guess too, Pat, in the garage here is that this garage is finished, so it's got a finished drywall system in here, so that'll help with the reducing fumes from getting into the rest of the house as well.
Good point. Good catch, because there is a requirement for not only the door to stop any gas or fumes, but also the whole area. And they can accomplish it by, when you notice the light fixtures are below, right? They're not boxes that are carved out. So this is what we call a gas barrier.
Exactly.
Yeah, from the rear of the house. Good call. Well, Kyle, that finishes our inspection downstairs. We'll go upstairs now. We're gonna find a lot of the same, or look at a lot of the same things that we looked in the basement. Just because, or at the bottom level, just because it was all finished nicely. So same thing, we're gonna look and feel the stairs, make sure that this run meets the requirements. How'd they feel to you?
It felt pretty good to me.
Yep, yeah, so they're like that, so we're pretty good there. We know they're the same treads. We have this, what we call a guard, in this case all the way around, just like outside. And the height of this should be at least inside 36 inches.
36 inches.
And it is, it's a little better. So, that's good. So we come up into basically our kitchen, dining room, living room area, open concept, as they say.
Yeah.
So what are we looking for here?
So we got a space here. We don't have there's no appliances in here yet, but there's a space here for a stove. So we want to make sure that that there's no open electrical here. We got an electrical outlet down there for the stove itself. Looks like there's one here, a box here for the fan, which is not installed yet.
Yeah, so we'll just make a note of that, right? So again, this is the supplemental exhaust, right?
Exactly.
So we do have a main one to the system here.
Yep.
But now we need one for supplemental exhaust.
Exactly, and those get included in that calculation when they do the balance of the system.
Absolutely. So another thing we always check is again the sink. So because this has adaptable housing requirements applied, that trap arm for that trap there, where the wall is supposed to be 12 inches off the floor, it looks like it is, and it's got the proper trap on it.
Yep.
Patio doors or garden doors that go out to that rear deck that we were on earlier, so there's no issue here. If that deck was not there, and they had these doors in, they have a nice little sign, but we would make this door inoperable.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So they would have to take this out, switch around, and make sure that the door cannot be opened until they get their deck on. What about stuff like this? This is what we call a head unit for...
That's for a heat pump.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly. We want to check, what type of heating system do they have in this place, right?
Yeah, so these are deemed not to be a heating system. They're a heating appliance for a room. So this is why you'll see the electric baseboards put in, right? Because that is a heating system under the code. So people typically put them both in, just because that's not a heating system. This is. They won't use these. They generally use them.
Exactly.
And not only will this heat, it will also cool. Perfect. Hey Kyle, so we're coming down the hall here, and we got another bathroom with a couple double sinks. So basically we're going to look at the same things as we did downstairs. So the hot water, right? They're not cross-connected on these.
Yep.
We're going to look at the traps, make sure the traps are appropriate, which they are. They're P-traps. The hot water is good there now. It's on the right side. And again, we look at the toilets to make sure they have the shut-off. So, yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yep. Not much else to see here, right? Again, they got the two exhausts, so. And this leads right into probably the master bedroom, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so again, same as downstairs. We want to check the windows, make sure that they meet egress.
So we'll just open one. These two are the same. You can tell we're looking at them, just to make sure there's no limiters on them. So this one is good. So this one is 30 by 19. So if you did the math, that's going to be well over the minimal requirement. And every dimension is more than 15. Always check the closets. Have a quick look. Just a closet.
This particular one, we got two closets.
So sometimes they hide the attic access in one of the closets. So and again, I always take this off. We don't have to test it again. I test it downstairs, but I do like to see if it's a smoke or carbon monoxide.
Exactly.
And back out in the hallway, same thing. We're going to look at this one. So this is both carbon monoxide and smoke. So that's what's required. So that's good.
Yep.
Same thing with this bedroom. We're going to come in quickly. And we're going to check, make sure there's a smoke alarm. There is. Same thing with the window. I can already tell that this will meet requirements just by the size of it. We'll double check. Just a closet for storage.
And then the same thing here, Pat.
Yep. So we have our exhaust or our supply. We have another smoke alarm. I always pull these off just to make sure they're going to work. The window's good. And closet.
Closet's good.
And our last closet. And there's our attic access, so.
Yeah. So depending on the previous inspections, sometimes the attics aren't blown in at the installation
Right.
stage, so
Yep.
we want to check that to make sure that it was
Or
done.
get an attic insulation card. Right?
Or get an attic insulation card, yeah.
Yeah, and they'll verify that the appropriate amount of insulation
exactly.
materials up there. It could be fiberglass, could be cellulose, typically. Okay, Kyle, I think that wraps up our occupancy inspection for this house anyway. So just to sum up, I guess, we did find a few deficiencies or a few things we had to confirm anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll make a note of that on here.
Yeah. The other things we want to do is we did get the final electrical report.
That's great.
Yeah, we got that. We also are going to request, as you mentioned earlier, about the HRV balancing report, the form F326. Yeah.
And in this particular case, because we're out in the country, we got a septic system, we'd ask for a certificate of installation for that as well.
Yeah, as well, yeah, because we're not on a municipal system.
That's correct, yeah, exactly.
So there's some documents we have to gather up.
Another good thing to do too is to go through, like we did it kind of outside, make sure that there's no other engineering paperwork that we need, any sign-offs, anything like that we'll need in order to issue the occupancy.
Yeah, so we'll review the file a little more closely to see if there's anything in there in that regard, like make sure, but there doesn't seem to be any tall walls or anything like that here, or foundation issues, so we're probably pretty good on that end. The deficiencies, as I recall, that we're at least going to look into is obviously the lateral bracing for the stairs and the deck. We'll question them about the beam.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
We'll just make a note about the grade. The grade not quite, and we know it's not finished. Was there anything else? Oh, the bedroom window.
The bedroom window, or the potential bedroom window. We're not sure if it's a bedroom or not at this point.
And the other thing is that garage door, isn't it?
Exactly, making
so
sure
we
that
want to
that
make
closes.
sure that's working.
Yep.
So I think that's about it.
I think that's everything. I think we're good to go.
All right. Hopefully the homeowners can get that stuff looked after and get in here sooner than later.
Exactly.
All right, let's go.
All right.
Well, that finishes up this one. Let's get on to the next one.
All right. Where are we going for lunch?
Oh, where are you taking me?